Hey, Dr. She Rich here. I wanted to take a really brief moment to just say thank you. Thank you to all of you who supported me in the release of episode 1 of my podcast, Surviving with She Rich. I received such overwhelming support. I received awesome feedback. And I am just thankful to all of you who called and texted and commented, but also who gave suggestions on how I could be better and stronger moving forward. So I thank you for all of that. It is really a blessing to know that people care enough to share. And so I said a lot in that first episode, but there were 2 points, 2 key points that I shared that were the first 2 steps that I utilized in moving towards my healing. And that was acknowledgement and forgiveness. And so when I think about the word acknowledgement, acknowledgement actually comes from a root word, which is aknoin, and it means to recognize, to admit, or to confess. And when I think about my process of healing, I had to recognize that there was a root to my pain. There was a root that I needed to recognize affected and impacted my behaviors. Where did it come from? Where did it start? I had to recognize that. And then the next thing I had to do in my acknowledgement was admit. I needed to admit that it hurt me. I needed to admit I was affected by it. And I also needed to admit that some of the behaviors that I dealt with and some of the behaviors that I betrayed um, actually hurt others. I had to admit that. And then the third part of that acknowledgement was the confession. I talked about how trauma silenced me for many years, but when I got to the acknowledgement and I was able to confess, what does that mean? That means I was able to use my voice. I was able to share. I was able to expose. I was able to talk about it. And I realized that that didn't mean to everybody. I had to know who I could confess to. And first and foremost, it's God. He was the first one that I could trust to confess and to share what it was that I was dealing with. He already knew, but in my conversation with him, in my devotional time, in my prayer time, in my quiet time with him, what that allowed me to do was have a safe space because we all know we can share with God. He is the most discreet. He will cover and not just cover, he will put a plan in place that helps us move toward that healing process. And so, confession, we always know we can confess to him. There may also be a confidant, maybe a family member, maybe a friend, a close friend, someone who is trustworthy and proven to be able to help us deal with sensitive situations without exposing us unnecessarily. And so that may be someone that we can confess to. And then finally, I talked about the importance of utilizing trained professionals. There are people God has gifted who are trained to be able to guide us through trauma, to guide us with grief, to encourage us in areas where we're hurt and need to be healed. There are trained professionals. And so that acknowledgement component is very, very important, very important. And then the next step was forgiveness. And I need to, this gets a little sticky sometimes when we talk about forgiveness because a lot of people look at it as a form of weakness. And actually, it is not. Forgiveness is a form of strength, a brave move, a power move. And basically, what it does is it allows us to be active part in facilitating our own healing. When we forgive, we actually are moving towards freedom and a release of a burden that we're carrying. And so, what forgiveness is not, and what it does not require us to do, just because we reconcile does not mean we have to reconnect. It does not mean that we have to now give a person access to us who has not earned that, or who has shown that they are not trustworthy enough to handle us with care. And so, with forgiveness, I can reconcile without having to reconnect. The Bible requires us to love. That's a requirement. It does not require us to give access to other people, especially if they have not earned that or they're not deserving of that. And so when we forgive, understanding that that's hard work. So it's hard work, but it's work that helps propel us toward a place of freedom. We are literally canceling a debt that a person owes us that they really cannot pay. My pastor talks about that often. He has said it several times. Forgiveness, you are literally pardoning someone because what they owe you, they really can't pay you back. And so when I think about my road to healing, the path that I took, I had to acknowledge and I had to forgive. And what both of those did was they allowed me an opportunity not just to love, but to live. So if you have to go back and look at episode 1 again, I encourage you to do so as we prepare for episode 2, which I am excited to say will drop on Monday, November 4th. So that is, again, where I kind of talk about what did I do to come out of this place, these low points that I talked about. So again, I hope you tune in. If you have not already gone over to my YouTube page, I encourage you to do so at Dr. She Rich and subscribe, and then also share this information with others, especially if you know it'll bless them. So thank you again for your support, and I look forward to providing. Nature. I look forward to providing information and content that will bless you and help all of us move towards a place of healing. Thank you and be blessed.